Determine each absolute value. First, let's make sure we understand the definition of absolute value. It is the distance away from zero. So it doesn't matter whether you are a negative number or a positive number. Your distance away from zero is always going to be a positive value. We can see that negative 3 is 3 units away from zero, and 4 is 4 units away from zero. The distance is always a positive value. The absolute value of negative 7. If we plot negative 7 on the number line, we can see that negative 7 is 7 units away from 0. So the absolute value of negative 7 is 7. In part B, we have to make sure we read this correctly. This negative sign actually stands for the opposite of. Now I'm putting it in quotation marks because that would be literally how you would say this expression out loud. You would say the opposite of the absolute value of 3. Well, if we just take the absolute value of 3, we know that's just 3, because 3 is 3 units away from 0. So if we replace the absolute value of 3 with just a plain regular 3, because now it's representing a distance, we have the opposite of the number 3. Well, the opposite of 3 is just negative 3. Finally, part C, again, you have to make sure you're reading this correctly. That first negative sign means the opposite of. So this says the opposite of the absolute value of negative 6. You have to make sure you don't make a common mistake here, which is to look at those two negative signs and think they turn into a positive. That's not the correct way to do this. You first have to evaluate the absolute value. You have to do what's inside the absolute value bars first, because you have to figure out what the absolute value of negative 6 is. Well, the absolute value of negative 6 is 6, because negative 6 is 6 units away from 0. So we have the We have the opposite of the absolute value of negative 6. Well, the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So we have the opposite of 6, which is negative 6.